Seasons have always been important to me. The seasons in nature, like the seasons of our lives, representing constant change. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, so I was fortunate to see all 4 distinct seasons. And I love the green leaves as they transform into the skyline of fiery orange and red and yellow and purple hues of autumn before they fall from the branches and flutter to the ground, making way for the barren, cold Illinois winters. And then the miracle of spring. It brings new life to the desolate ground, followed by the hot, humid summers, which then bring life back to the world, plants, vegetables, and fruit. I was literally born to love seasons. My birth date is March 20th, the first day of spring. Oh, and my blood type, B positive, so I had no choice but to be an optimist, regardless of what was going on. Which is good, because the universe has thrown many challenges my way. We like to joke around and say that I am the Grim Reaper's favorite chew toy. Yeah. I have been struck by lightning. I was attacked by a swarm of bees, which is where I learned I was allergic. And among many other events, I fell down a huge staircase. That was the beginning of my longest winter. I remember it like it was yesterday. It, like me, began in the spring, a puppy chewy at the top of the stairs, and my boot heel, which managed to catch that rawhide and send me flying. Now, I've always wanted to fly, and great, I can. My problem is I can't land, because I crashed with a whack at the bottom of the staircase, right on my spine. Oh, well, I knew that was going to be a problem, but I was not prepared for what was coming next. And that would be 6 long seasons of winter. Because by autumn, as the leaves were changing, so was my mobility. And my pain, which had been bad, it became unbearable. So I did what anyone would do. I went to the doctor and I got an MRI. But guess what? I wasn't prepared for what they said either. Apparently, I had cracked open L4 and L5 spinal bones. And the gel that leaked out, it can dissipate into the body. Well, according to them, mine decided to become a spike. Now, there is no good place in the human body for a spike. But lodged in the sciatic nerve is a terrible place. And depending on how that spike moved, depended on my mobility. And every morning, I would check myself to see what moved. There were days where I had no use of my hands or arms. There were days where I had no legs. And there were many days where I was frozen from the chin down. So, I have to say, during the worst times in life, there are always things to be grateful for. And I was grateful for my family and friends because they never gave up on me. They brought me to every top doctor and every top specialist, and they were relentless, which I needed. And unfortunately, each doctor would take one look at my MRI and say, "I'm sorry, I don't want to operate on you." And then they would get out their prescription pads and they would write me a prescription, and I had everything. They gave me Valium, they gave me Scalaxin, which is a muscle relaxer, and every muscle relaxer you could think of. They gave me every hydrocodone, morphine, Vicodin. I was my own local pharmacy. But sadly, nothing worked. And no matter what combination I took, things just got worse. And what we found out later was that on the days where my hands worked, I was actually taking Valium, let's say Scalaxin, and for the fun of it, Vicodin, every 20 minutes, because the pain was so bad in my head, I thought the 4 to 6 hours had elapsed. So, it was an absolute nightmare. And it was around that time that I said to my husband, if the last doctor says no, you are going to have to smother me with a pillow. Of course, he said he couldn't do that. But the thing was, I didn't want to die. But I didn't feel like I had any choices. I had no quality of life. The pain was unbearable. And quite frankly, I was a burden on everybody, even though they would never say that. So I did what I could to keep my spirits up, because I am an optimist. So I would, on the days my hands worked, I would write. I wrote a novel, and I finished the business plan and financial performa for a company my family was trying to purchase before I fell. And I waited, and then a miracle happened. And my parents came to me and said, we found a top surgeon who has worked on the best Chicago sports stars. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, Cubs, Sox, you name it. This guy's worked on it. Okay, well, guess what? My stupid spike is not going to be a problem for this guy. So I was so excited. And we get to the appointment, and he took a look at my MRI and said no. I was devastated. No, I was crushed. So I burst into tears, and I begged because this was my hope. So he said, all right, honey, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will operate. But you will be in intensive care for a minimum of 9 days, and I will not promise that you will ever walk again. Okay, let's do it. I was so excited because something is better than nothing, right? Let's go. But my parents each took my shoulders and dragged me out of there and said no, they would find a better way. Well, days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, and my long winter continued. One after another, each doctor said no. And one day, we were at a top surgeon, and he looked at my MRI and said, whoa, that is a huge hunkin' piece. What do you say we take that out this Saturday? What? You could have knocked my family over with a feather. So I cannot tell you how excited I was, but as the days got closer, I was terrified. So my dad said that he thought I was growing feathers and turning into a great big chicken, which he was. He was right, I was. But I had all these doctors' voices in my head, and I was so worried. What if they were right? What if I was in intensive care for weeks? What if I never walked again? What if the pain never left? What if I was a burden forever? And the fear and panic just kept rolling. And then I stopped myself, and I remembered a phrase that I've leaned on a good portion of my life. And that is, courage is not the absence of fear. It's action in the face of it. So I grabbed onto that sentence, and I held on, and I said to myself, I haven't died yet. There's a reason, and I will walk again. And I did. And I have to say, that Sunday morning, after the surgery, when I woke up, I was petrified. And I did my morning, my movement, and I shook, and my hands worked. And I thought, okay. And then my legs worked. And I got up out of that bed. And I danced around the room like a Christmas elf. I felt amazing. And then Dr. Brown walked in and started yelling at me, so I got back in bed. When he sat down, he told me that was the largest piece he had ever removed from a spine. And I was grateful. And I said, thank you. Now send me home. And of course he said, absolutely not. But I put on my attorney hat. And I said, Doc, I do not want to get a virus or a cold here. I do not want to cough or sneeze with this giant hole in my back. And this is the best I have felt in a year and a half. Please let me go home. And he did. And I left that hospital in less than 24 hours of that surgery. Now, unfortunately for me, I also made the choice. It wasn't a conscious choice, but I decided to stop taking all medications. And that was really stupid. And later, when I talked to the doctor, he yelled at me again. He liked to yell at me. I did a lot that he really appreciated. And I'm going to say to everybody, taper down, do it the right way. But in my defense, at that moment, all I wanted was to be clear. I just wanted my life back. And I had been a zombie for a year and a half, and I wanted to come home 100%. So I spent the winter and the spring mostly sitting on the floor, sick as a dog. So sick. And I shook, I was nauseous, I had headaches, and quite frankly, I also had been tasting like I had been sucking on metal, and I have no idea what that is, but it happened. But even that passed. And it took 2 years, and I had to have a second spinal surgery. But I finally reached summer, and I am standing here in front of you fully functional. And it was a miracle. Oh. I finished that novel, and the bank loved the business plan and financials, and my family got that business. And I finally understood what my grandmother told me when I was a little girl. She had sat me down and said, "Barbie, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything." Ha! Now I know what that meant. And she was right. And you know what else I learned? I learned that in all the times I've faced death in my many seasons of life, I am still here for a reason. And I truly believe that reason is to help as many people as I can and to share my voice and my stories with as many people that will listen. And I have turned into an empowerment coach, a motivational speaker, and I am a survivor. In the great words of the French philosopher and author Albert Camus, in the depth of winter, I learned that within me, there is an invincible summer. And I believe that everyone has that. And I am so grateful to be here sharing that message with you. Thank you.